Welcome to EPJ Pathshala. I am Pirzada Rauf. I am teaching at Jindal Global University, and today we will deal with regional policy models and resource management. The content of this course is resource location at a regional level, regional policies, and resource management, and also the critical evaluation of those policies. The learning outcome would be understanding the utility of resource location at a regional level, explaining the resource management model in a regional perspective, and also critically evaluating those regional policies in resource management from the stakeholders' perspective. The keywords are region, corporate, state power, models, etc. In resource location at a regional level, we talk about resource location as the first and the major requirement for its management. Location and appraisal of resources were done solely by the first identifier. But with the change in the technology and the mode of appropriation, resource identification and its subsequent management has become the task of ruling arena in the society. The 18th century saw the emergence of nation states. These states, with a well-defined political bondage, maintains a strict sense of sovereignty. There lies a well-demarcated spatial set of state apparatuses. The resources at the national frontiers are no more a cause of bondage between humans and the resources, but it has acted as an ideological tool to manifest the idea of jingoism among the people residing far away from the frontier boundaries. The idea of dividing the earth in artificial cells have turned the humans incapable of being associated with the resources at the world level. The sense of alienation has created a fetish pride in the resource depletion in an enemy state. The known history of humankind has seen a rise of nationalism in the disguise of having control over resources. The rampant war over resources is actually a war of hegemony which belittles the question of resource management and sustainable development. Region is an area. That area which has unique characteristics with regard to one of the natural or anthropological parameters. The attributes of this region can both be human as well as natural, that of climate or of atmospheric pressure. Even the language, the power structure of the government, the religion, and the others such socioeconomic attributes can be of constituent of a region. For example, India, the region of divergent nationalities in which people from different sort of nationalities establish their identity on the given geographical area, and these identities create a different sort of political, cultural or social space. Now, at the regional level, the resource management is also concerned with two or more states as such following problems which may arise. These may be disputes among the states regarding the ownership of resource or resources at the frontier which are an exclusive possession of the state. These possessions are a sort of security, guarantee of the state. Given this scenario, the local control over these resources are belittled, thus hampering the process of resource management at a regional level. The institutions involved in the regional resource management have to face major administrative procedures and clearance from all the states involved in the region. This makes regional level natural resource management a tedious task. This also repels environment-friendly groups to work in a direction of the resource management at this level. Also, the lack of indigenous knowledge in resource management has led to widespread biodiversity loss. These losses are mainly due to excessive state control over frontier resources. Human resources at the frontiers have undergone a dramatic depletion. Disassociated from the cultural ties, the human becomes subject of a particular state. These associations build labor for the national cause, but in essence, it has delinked the human interaction with the nature and its de facto management. Planning the regional spatial system. The resource system exists on a given geographical space that varies with time. In large part of the globe, the pattern of resource distribution, the techniques available with the state to harness the available resources, it determines the planning need of the state or non-state actors involved in resource management. But the planning for the resource development is not available at each regional level. The need to develop regional bodies to cooperate for the resource planning and management have been felt by the developing countries and the countries like India. They have been developing integrated resources and this development and certain development models at the regional levels. To implement the neoliberal policies, the government agencies at the regional level are planning the policies related to resource management. In contiguous with the neoliberal policies, certain corporations or NGOs also plan the resource management strategies of the third world states. This has facilitated the resource extraction policies of the imperial capital. This mechanism has made the policymakers to implement industrial friendly methods of resource management. This aspect of development was less than successful since many such prescriptions were not amenable to direct transfer and other required careful adaptation to a new context. Moreover, not uncommonly, national spatial planning was beset by fads and short-lived experiments, by severe conflicts such as those between the proponents of centralization strategies and the advocates of decentralization policies, and by the near universal condemnation of the rate of the third world urbanization that finally led to dissatisfaction with traditional theories of spatial development based on Western concept of center-periphery relationships. Set in motion the search for alternative strategies, particularly during the late 1960s and early 70s in the circle of intellectuals. The program of rural development integrated with resource management can be guiding light for the resource-based sustainable planning. Self-sustaining economic growth and an equitable distribution of benefits of the growth in geographic space cannot occur in the absence of a well-articulated hierarchy of widely dispersed yet closely integrated human settlement. The metropolitan areas, intermediate regional cities, market towns and villages that perform specialized and diverse production, distribution, consumption and exchange functions with no exceptions. The economic set in the developing countries are incapable of working out any resource-based developmental agenda. In those countries, human settlements rarely constitute a functional hierarchy, and for this reason they fail to provide an inter-meshed system of exchange that will provide the requisite incentives for increased application of labor, capital and human skills. Here, instead of emerging as economic systems with different prospects, with dispersed market towns, linking rural and urban centers, developing nations remain village, household and small group economies that do not provide large enough markets for commercial agriculture or a network of industrial production and exchange. The population scattered around different remote regions can be used to mobilize the resource concentration and the management policies. There is a little reason to save and invest. Specialization and division of labor do not occur. the opportunities for market expansion and non-agricultural employment are few. The primary access to resources are made through social interactions of people. The poor conditions of the people and the backward superstitious beliefs also act as a hindrance to the resource management techniques. Besides, the marginal area faces the spatial discrimination in terms of having less access to the technologies provided by the government. This hinders the development process of resources management. Further, their general lack of access to such urban-based facilities and services as basic health, education, social services is virtually universal. Their limited access of external market towns and larger regional centers in which the services and the facilities fundamental to the sustained rural resource development are located, places marginal areas and their inhabitants at a severe disadvantage, as does their lack of territorial integration and cohesion. If marginal areas are to be transformed to satisfy basic human needs through self-reliant development, a balance must be struck between internal, territorial, integration of renewable, natural and human resources within a marginal area and the exogenous links that integrate it within the larger national and international economies. The third world countries have sidelined the imperialist agenda to control the resources of their countries. Redistribution alone would do little to overcome rural poverty of the magnitude found in Asia. The need to stress on the growth with equity through the guidelines of developed nation would be a cause of worry to the economy of the third world nations. This, in turn, would require extensive investment in physical infrastructure, services, and productive activities in rural regions located strategically in intermediate-sized cities, smaller towns, rural market centers. The growth of rural service centers that would link towns to rural hinterlands would also be encouraged in order to increase the access of a rural power to basic services and facilities. The need to locate investors at a spatial location is for interest of the imperial capital. The imperial capital expansion in the field of resource management has led to change in the perspective towards management procedures, but there has been an attempt to be resolved by first, the extension of markets for increased agricultural production and other rural resources, thereby raising income for rural families. More widespread distribution of services such as health, education, family planning, and vocational training, the technical inputs needed for increased agricultural production such as new seed varieties, appropriate technology, farm-to-market roads, and rural electrification, as well as communications and transportation. Third, the creation of new rural employment opportunities schemes, especially in agro-processing, agro-business, small-scale manufacturing, and cottage industries that use local resources as the primary inputs for production, and as fourth, a slowdown in the rate of alteration of the pattern of rural-urban migration. But the pattern and the composition of spatial systems and the roles of various types of settlements differ drastically among developing nations. And any serious effort to shape spatial systems to promote more equitable and widespread development, especially in marginal zones, requires careful analysis and planning. Ruddle and Grandshaft point towards the dangers of inappropriate developmental policies in marginal regions. They note that these areas are necessarily ecological marginal zones and that the ecological stability of more populated and developed regions often depends on the stability of the marginal areas. Major disruptions of the ecological system in the marginal areas would have adverse effects on more developed areas of the country. Moreover, development is inappropriate or ill-considered, it would likely leave people in marginal regions worse off and more alienated. The marginal areas' populations are particularly susceptible to this because their resource system and the ways of life are often radically different from those of more developed areas. They note, I quote, "There is therefore a real likelihood for increased poverty, alienation, and cultural disintegration under conditions of radical disruption." Unquote. In the past, however, spatial analysis of regional development had been constrained by three other problems: the failure to recognize the importance of spatial factors in national and regional resource development, the lack of an operational framework for integrated spatial analysis, and the paucity and unreliability of the data in rural regions for formulating effective developmental plans. The human resource appraisal and its proper management can be done only after building a better regional spatial system. And in another part of the module, we'll be discussing about regional policies and resource management. At the regional level, various management organizations exist. These organizations operate in concert with the state government and at the state level. Following are the major such institutions. European topic, Center for Biological Diversity, the South African Development Community, Regional Environment Center. These all deal with the idea of resource management at a regional level. The main purpose of the topic centers are assist the European Environment Agency in its task of reporting on Europe's environment by addressing state and trends of biodiversity in Europe. Second, to provide the relevant information to support the implementation of environmental and sustainable development policies in Europe and in particular for the EU nature and biodiversity policies. Build capacity for reporting on biodiversity in Europe, mainly through the European Information and Observation Network. Also, we have South African Development Community. The main purpose of the organization is to bring spatial justice to the people from the divergent nationality, bringing of economic and cultural integration of the third world nations are to facilitate the resource management programs. The objectives of the organization are to be achieved through direct access to resource based on the principle of sustainability and equity. The objectives of SADC as stated in Article 5 of SADC Treaty 1992 are to achieve development and economic growth, elevate poverty, enhance the standard of quality of life of the people of Southern Africa, and support the socially disadvantaged through regional integration. Second, evolve common political values, systems and institutions. Third, promote and defend peace and security. Fourth, promote self-sustaining development on the basis of collective self-reliance and the interdependence of member states. Also, achieve complementarity between national and regional strategies and programs. Promote and maximize productive employment and utilization of resources of the region. Also, achieve sustainable utilization of natural resources and effective protection of the environment. Also, strengthen and consolidate the long-standing historical, social, cultural affinities and links among the people of the region. The Regional Environment Center (REC) was established by US and the government of Hungary as co-founder. The organization has been and was founded to assist with the transition process in the Central and Eastern Europe and to contribute to the environmental democracy building and cooperative problem solving within the environmental sector. The REC actively participates in key global, regional, and local processes and contributes to environmental and sustainability solutions within and beyond its country office network, transferring transnational knowledge and experience to countries and regions. To be able to perform its mission driven work, the REC needs continued political will translated into the following mandates. Supporting the SEE 2020 strategy, the REC is keen to explore opportunities to regain a clear political mandate to coordinate activities for the implementation of the SEE 2020 strategy under the environmental dimension. The REC would join other similarly mandated organizations working in SEEC, for example, the Southeast Europe Transport Observatory and the Energy Community, and contribute its unique added value to the process. Under the SEE 2020 strategy of the Regional Cooperation Council, that is RCC, the mandate of REC as the coordinator of the environmental dimension is to develop and implement new activities supported by EU IPA, multi-country instrument, additional mandates under the different secretaries hosted by REC, such as Themis Network for Natural Resources Management and Combating the Environmental Crime, as well as Regional Desk Office for SEE region under the Environment and Security Initiative, may likewise be extended. Supporting the transformation of Eastern Partnership countries, the REC will build on its experience and proven success in supporting the democratization process and strengthening local and participatory governance in countries that are in transition from centrally planned economies to democratic societies and free-market economy. Support will be offered through flagship projects, for example, through the promotion of local environmental and energy action plans LEAPS and the enhancement of civic engagement in municipalities in Eastern Partnership countries such as Ukraine. Supporting the implementation of EU policies, the REC needs commitment from its founders, especially the European Commission, as well as major donors and the partners, to support the implementation of respective EU policies on water, waste, urban development, biodiversity, and sustainable transport in CEE and SEE regions, and to facilitate partner countries' participation in the respective financial instruments of the European Union. Supporting the transition is to circular and low-level carbon economy, the added value of regional economic center for stakeholders in the CEE region will be in support for the transition to a circular and a low-carbon economy. This includes enhancing the region's climate change mitigation and adaptation capacities and providing assistance with the planning and implementation of this transition. It also involves promoting the sustainable management of natural resources, promoting and facilitating the implementation of post-2015 development agendas adopted by the United Nations development models, which are centric around the sustainable approach of the developmental agencies. The policies of REC have always facilitated the developmental policies across the globe. The agencies have linkage with different groups of both national and international level so as to implement the agendas of the development projects. More specifically, the REC can offer its expertise in capacity building, multi-stakeholder dialogue and action at a local level. The critical evaluation of these policies. The management policies of the regional level have a linkage of state and of the stakeholder in the resource appraisal and management. The problems arising due to interstate conflict have threatened the resource capital of the humanity. The sense of state power and the bureaucratic apparatus attached to every source of resource management has turned every attempt of resource management into a futile exercise. The regional bodies are mostly corporate friendly and have a view of commercializing and commodifying the resource rather than maintaining and sustaining the resource. The organizations like Greenpeace in India have been a victim of state corporate power who acts in concert to exploit the natural resource for expansion of imperial capital. It was reported in Hindu 2015. Hindu is a newspaper. Regional level of policy making minimizes the concept of collective community-based interaction with the nature. The mismanagement of resources by the state with no stake of regional institute in the resource appraisal has turned the resource management and the policy making of the same as a state monopoly, with no concern for its sustainability. The question for the sovereignty has to be linked and more power must be given to institutions involved at the regional level for management and the power to make and implement policies with this regard. The need is to make policies which are more people-centered and which mandate people's participation at all levels. It is only by the people's movement that the power of sovereignty can be undermined. In the summary of this module, we talked about the idea of dividing the earth in artificial cells, which have turned humans incapable of being associated with the resources of the world. The sense of alienation has created a fetish pride in resource depletion in the enemy state. The known history of humankind has seen rise of nationalism in disguise of having control over resources. The added value in REC will be for the low carbon emission. This includes promotion of resource management. The institution also provides assistance for resource appraisal and management. Since the state power and the bureaucratic apparatus attached to every source of resource management has turned every attempt of the resource management into a very futile exercise. Thank you.